February 1st is when 80% of people give up on their New Year goals. 80%. That is a lot of people. That is ridiculous to me. I do not want that to be you. So in today's episode, we are going to cover why people typically are giving up on their goals and how to overcome that. And one of the main reasons I've seen that people give up on their goals so quickly is because they are overwhelmed. They lose that New Year's motivation, the rah-rah New Year, that extra to do things in the year starts to dwindle down around this week. And instead, people start to be more doubtful. They start to lose their confidence. They start to feel behind. And I'm going to cover how to overcome all of that in today's episode. Welcome to the Fire Inside podcast. There's a fire in your heart and ambition in your soul. You know what you want to do and you know you need to make a change to get there, but you haven't quite gotten there yet and you want to get there with more ease. That is what we tackle on this podcast. All things personal development, time management, and leveling up so you can live as your best, most highest self. This podcast is your weekly reminder to stop playing small and start living full out, whether it's in your career, your wellness, your relationships, or your personal development. I'm all about helping you level up. I'm your host, Sade Kelly, wife, mom, time management coach, and whatever else I feel like being. But overall, I'm a life enthusiast, and I am the founder and CEO of The Fire Inside, which is a time management coaching company where I help ambitious women manage their time so they can balance their work, their wellness, and their relationships peacefully. And what that ends up being for my clients is achieving their goals 6 times faster and saving 28 or more hours per week. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about overcoming overwhelm. And of course, to start off, I want to share just some moments that I've felt overwhelmed over the last couple of months. Now, I think it's super important for me to share these stories because I don't want you to see me and think, oh, she's perfect. She has her life all together. She knows how to manage her time perfectly. So everything goes as planned. I do have really strong time management skills and also other strong skills. And I would say I'm a boss. All right, that's enough. But overall, I would say that I still have difficult times, and anyone you watch online, whether they are in the productivity space, the business space, personal development space, whatever genre or niche that they're in, they face challenges. And even though they may come across as perfect, they all have moments where they feel overwhelmed, where they feel anxiety, where they feel stress, where they may neglect themselves a bit and they need to improve how they're handling life circumstances. So I want to share a moment recently that kind of took me off guard, and it's going to make sense when I share it, obviously. And I want to share how I got over that overwhelm through different steps that I did. So many of you know, if you've been watching the last couple of episodes in the podcast, that I had a baby, and he just makes me smile. Look, I said baby and my whole face lit up, but he makes me so happy, and I love being a mom. But I'm truly honest, becoming a mom and transitioning into becoming a mom was one of the most challenging things I've ever done. It was really hard. I'm still figuring out my rhythm. I've gotten much better because he's almost 7 months and I've had 7 months to kind of figure it out. But the transition was really hard and it caused a lot of overwhelm in my life. It caused a lot of stress. It led to dark moments at times, but overall, I will not say that I don't enjoy being a mom or that I want anyone to feel bad for me who's hearing this. I just want to share that it was a really overwhelming time. So I had my son back in July, and I will say overall, my pregnancy was pretty smooth. I had moments that were difficult, but I've heard like some other stories of other people, and it was nowhere near like that. It was not bad at all. So I visualized like having this amazing birth. I knew exactly how I wanted to go. I had the amazing doula, and I knew the hospital. Like it's the literally like, what do they call it? They call it like the baby factory here in Atlanta. Like it was all planned out. I thought I had it in the bag. And of course, knowing me, and my therapist would laugh at this if she watched this, I will plan things out and think it's going to go exactly to plan. And while I know I need to adapt and things may not go exactly to plan, I always have in the back of my mind that it probably will. And if not, I'll figure it out. And that's exactly how my birth went. So my son was born 3 days past his due date, which is not, unusual for your first baby. But the thing about it was that my birth did not go anywhere near the plan. Like a lot of things went differently than I thought it was gonna go, and I was in extreme pain. Like I don't want to scare anybody, but I just want to be real that I practiced. Like I literally used all different type of methods to practice. I would hold ice, I would like work out, I would do visualizations. I did all the different things to try to figure out how I could get myself prepared for it. But nothing really prepares you for contractions. They are just intense feeling. I don't know how to explain it. It's like cramps times like 1,000 quadrillion. But you make it through, right? Like I would definitely have more kids. I want to have more kids. But all of that was way more stressful than I thought. And there were moments in my labor where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And it was super, super tough. But I did end up like, I think it was 32 or 30. Why am I forgetting the amount of hours? It was 31 hours later that I had my son. So that was a really long time to go through that. So that was the first part that was really, really challenging. Just the birth overall was challenging for both of us. Like my son came out, he was all red, his head looking like a cone. I was all like bent out of shape. Like it's a whole process, right? And that was difficult, but then I was able to recover. I was doing pretty well. I left and went home. And then 12 days later, I actually ended up being hospitalized again. Now that is something I did not expect to happen to me. And I'm glad I noticed that my body was a bit more poofy and puffy. And like I looked more swollen than I thought I should by like 2 weeks later-ish. And I ended up having postpartum preeclampsia, and which is a really serious condition, and you have to be hospitalized for it most of the time. So I ended up being hospitalized, and I was in the hospital again for like a day and a half, almost 2 days. And I had to leave my baby for the first time, which I'm so glad my mom was here and she was able to support us. But all of those things happened and they were super scary. To be honest, like it was a really tough time, and I didn't really even share it with a lot of people as it was happening because I was just like in shock. Like I'm someone who has amazing health, who takes care of her wellness. Like I don't think I've ever been in the hospital besides when I was born. Like I'm never really gotten surgery or had any issues. So having all these back-to-back hospital visits was really scary for me. It was really challenging. I'm trying to figure out this mom thing. I'm trying to figure out breastfeeding. I'm trying to figure out the baby. Like it was a really challenging time. And luckily I didn't have to work. Like I had prepped enough of my business ahead of time that I was not working for like at least 2 or 3 months. But there is a part of you that feels a little guilty and a little like, can I do this because of being an entrepreneur and trying to take time off? And for me personally, I didn't have a full-on team. I just had an assistant. So all of that happened. And in the midst of that, throughout my pregnancy, my husband was having a lot of health challenges. And for months, doctors didn't know what was going on. And I was just racking up bills. And then let me tell you guys, having a baby is also very pricey. Like we racked up a whole bunch of bills on ultrasounds and doctor visits and all of the things, right? Doing a baby shower, like all of those things. I think we underestimated what we should have had to set aside for those parts of life. And of course, illness that we didn't know could even existed that my husband ended up being diagnosed with. Like we didn't know how to prep for that. So can you imagine all the emotional stress? And like, I think I shared with you guys too, I lost a lot of people like in my lifetime, but also during my pregnancy, I lost like my brother who I was really close to. So there was a lot of emotional up and down that I was going through, a lot of financial stress that both of us were going through. And then of course we're now on one income, and I knew I could see that it was stressing out my husband, but also I couldn't even do anything because I was dealing with a lot physically and trying to take care of a new baby. So we had a lot of overwhelming things going on. And like I said, 7 months later, we're recouping from it. But it takes time to overcome all of those things. And I want you to know if you're dealing with something really difficult, like just know life happens to all of us. We may not share it in depth, and we may not always want people to know what we're going through. But I think it's important to just realize that what you see on social media is a lot of time face value, and people are always going through challenging things. And some people handle it better than others. And I want to empower you and let you know that you can manage this, right? And it's okay to tell your story if you want to tell your story. Now, I will say that I shared my story. My first email back to my email list, I shared like that I had my baby, but also it was, a challenging time, more challenging than I thought. Even though I'm enjoying it, there's ups and downs to it. You can still enjoy something even when it's hard. And I had shared that I was hospitalized, right? Like 12 days later after my birth. And no lie, you guys, I had this troll woman, like the boldness. She emailed me back after I sent that email to my email list and was like, boo-hoo, you decided to have a baby. And I thought it was the most mean, hurtful comment like anyone could ever leave. And in that moment, I was like, what the, like I was mad. I was upset. But then I reeled it back in. I reminded myself that these are just online trolls. These are people I do not know. Every time I put myself out there to share my story and to empower others, there's going to be haters. There's going to be people who have bitterness in their heart who are going to say mean things. Now, to say that to me, I think that was absolutely ridiculous. To say that to a mom, to say that about a condition that I had that literally like thousands of women die from is crazy. But you know, I'm here. Still I rise. F the haters. But I just want you to know that things happen, people say ish, and we can move forward. So I want to share 3 things that I do anytime I'm feeling overwhelmed that you can also implement to help you take control of your life and be empowered by your life. So instead of feeling like a victim when you're going through challenging moments in life, I want to give you some tools to actually use the challenges that you're going through as empowerment. Use them to inspire yourself to rise up and keep going, because you know that you're just being tested, right? We go through these ups and downs in life because we're being tested. We're being shown how strong we are. We're being shown how resilient we can be. And here are 3 things that I absolutely love implementing to help me overcome that overwhelm when it just feels like I'm suffocating, when it feels like too much, when it feels like I'm close to a panic attack. Here's what I typically do. Number 1, have a bounce back list. Now, what this is a list of activities that you do when you're feeling overwhelmed. So for me, one of the first things I do is schedule time with my therapist. I am not one to be shy about therapy. I love therapy. I think my therapist has helped me process so many things I wouldn't have been able to process on my own. And sometimes when I feel like I don't need to go to her is when I know I exactly need to go to her, because it's always really helpful to just talk through things, even if they feel small. She's able to pinpoint things out, especially as they get to know you. You know, I've been with mine for I think 3 or 4 years. So she's able to pinpoint things, connect things, help me work through things and think of things in a new perspective that I wouldn't have. And I don't always love all of her advice, but majority of it makes sense. And I always take it and I process it for myself. I think about it and I make it where I can take what she's said and use parts of it that is most relevant for me. So therapy is number 1. Anytime I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's number 1 on my bounce back list. Number 2 is our journal. I'm a big journaler. I love to write. I've always loved writing. It's how I express things. I think that when you can get something out on paper, you get it out of your head and you're able to process it in a different way. And by the time you've gotten it all out on paper, it feels like you've released it and you tend to get more positive as you go along. There's a lot of studies that show that journaling helps people release things. It helps people process things. It helps us to just feel lighter. So I always have my go-to journal and I'll just journal everything out that I'm going through. And then the next thing I do is meditate. I love to take time to just relax, let my mind ease down. I love to do breath work. I like to do box breathing when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed. Like when my chest starts to feel super tight, one of the first things I do is 4-4-4-4. Is it 4 fours? It's box breathing. Essentially, it's breathing in for 4, holding it, breathing out for 4, and then holding it. And I repeat that about 6 times. And I promise you, you guys will feel your nervous system relax. Another type of breath work that people do is sometimes they'll hold in for a certain amount, maybe 6 counts, hold it, and then breathe out for 7 or 8 counts longer than they breathed in for. And that also helps people to regulate their nervous system. But I really love meditation and breath work to get me all the way together when I'm stress over here, and I want to scream. The next thing I do is exercise. I'm a big exerciser. I do it for health and for aesthetic reasons, period. But most of the time I'm doing it for wellness and mental wellness, not just physical wellness, but mental wellness, because it helps my endorphins. It helps me to just release frustration. I really love working out. It just is a great way to just let go and calm down and take a break. So those are my go-tos when it comes to my bounce back list. You can figure out which activities work best for you, but those are just some that I like to use. And number 2 that I do when it comes to overcoming overwhelm is I brain dump, and I get super strategic about my brain dump. So a brain dump for me is just letting everything out. So typically when you feel overwhelmed, and I always say this with clients, you're feeling overwhelmed because you have all of these things you need to do. Think about you have all these puzzle pieces all over the place and they haven't been put together in the beautiful puzzle that you want them to be. So what ends up happening is your mind is losing it, right? There's all these parts. You don't know how you can get all these things done and you're trying to figure out how to fit them in right, but you're not sure how to do it. So that is happening because you need to get strategic, right? So one of the first things I do is I brain dump. I list out all of the things. I list out what I feel is urgent, what's coming up, what's just noise, what is something that's bothering me, like everything. I catch it all on a sheet of paper. And then after I have it all on a sheet of paper, then I start to categorize it. And I figure out, okay, where can I put this? Where can I put that? What makes sense here? How can I prioritize this? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to delegate off to somebody else? Who do I need to ask to help me so that I don't feel so overwhelmed by all of these things? That is one of the best ways to let overwhelm go. Brain dumping and getting super strategic. And then one of the other things I'll do is talk to loved ones during this time. So like, it's really important when I'm not only delegating things off to other people, but I'm also like using them as a method to like release things. I think there's nothing wrong with like talking to, someone about what's going on with you, as long as like they're a trusted person and they're ready to receive that information, because sometimes we can just like dump things onto people that they're not ready for. So just make sure the person is open to it. But that is a good way to also release. So you're brain dumping, you're getting strategic about who can help you, you're talking to loved ones, you're leveraging the help that you have. So the third thing that I do is I work on my mindset. And I feel like in every podcast episode I talk about mindset, but mindset affects our entire lives. And if we're not working on our mindsets, we will not see a difference in our behaviors. So some things I do is I watch videos that inspire me, such as like YouTube videos, personal development videos, courses, podcasts. Like I keep a list of all my favorite ones that always get me back into shape, and I like to listen to them. Or I just go to my favorite creators and I listen to their things. Like I really love to watch interviews, especially with people who inspire me, like celebrities, people who've gotten certain business success. Like you kind of have to figure out who you admire, and then I would recommend watching their videos, watching them being interviewed, reading their memoirs, like learning about their life story, because all of them have had ups and downs. They've had the biggest breakthroughs after they had the darkest, toughest times, right? So I always remind myself that like this is a moment in time, things are going to get better. And I listen to things that enforce that message, because sometimes when we're really deep down, it feels like nothing's going to get better. It feels like there's no positivity coming. And we tend to just get like really upset and all in our head. And we need to release it and be reminded of positive, more empowering things. Another thing I do is I use my manifesto as a daily reminder. So I've talked about my personal manifesto in another episode. And can we just say that I've had enough episodes that I can't even reference which one I talked about? I think it was third one or fourth one, but let's go. So I use my personal manifesto as a way to just remind myself of the things that matter most to me. So I have a bunch of quotes like, your success is inevitable, follow your plan, not your mood. And you'll see some of those quotes kind of behind me that put them up. I actually created them myself. When you learn to leverage your time, you can be and do anything that you desire. Like I remind myself of these things. Like the only way you can fail is if you give up. Like there's just certain things that I remind myself. Don't take anything personally. I always like to remind myself of the 4 agreements. You have to kind of figure out what are the things that you like to remind yourself of, but you want to just have them readily available so you can remind yourself of those things. Something else I talked about, talking to loved ones, finding a support group, people who are going through something similar to you. That's really helpful to work on your mindset. I've been actually using Threads a lot for that and connecting with a lot of different women. Threads is really nice because you can just say something that you're thinking, and next thing you know, a mom or a wife or somebody who can relate to you will start commenting with you. You can DM on Instagram, and next thing you know, you made a new friend. Like I wouldn't be afraid to really use social media to our benefit. Sometimes we're just following people just for no reason. Like think about, who are you following? What information are you consuming? Especially when you're feeling overwhelmed and you're stressed out and you're feeling a bit down. You want to make sure you are following and you're engaging with people who are going to uplift you, who will remind you of what you are striving to become, and not people that are going to bring you down. Because if you're around people who are bringing you down, it's going to just bring you down further and mess you up even more. Another thing I do is I like to reminisce on good times. Like I like to shift my perspective when I'm feeling overwhelmed. So one thing I'll do is I'll go through my photo albums and I'll just like watch the little recaps that the iPhone makes, because they're just so nice. And I just remind myself of, you've been through tough things, girl. Like, look at you. Like, come on, you are strong. You are confident. So that's another thing I do. Like I say affirmations like, I'm strong, I'm confident. And those things may not always feel like they're true, but as you say them, you're talking to your subconscious, and your subconscious is eating it all up, right? Because a lot of our actions are happening from our subconscious. And your subconscious loves to hear those things because it reinforces the message. But for those people who have that conscious mind and who are like, I need to have some tangible example for my affirmations to feel solidified, one thing I always recommend that I do with my clients is, as you say affirmations, think of a time that resonates with that affirmation. So like, I am strong. Think of a time when you did something that proved like you were strong. Maybe you lifted heavy in the gym. Maybe you had a tough conversation, like whatever it is. Tie that to the affirmation. So as you say, I'm strong, think of that tough time when you were strong. When you say I'm resilient, think of that time when you were resilient. When you say I'm successful, think of that time when you graduated college, or you got a certain promotion at work, or you started that business. Like you literally took something that was just an idea in your head and you're making money from it. Sometimes when I get down to my business, I remind myself like, girl, you took an idea something that you thought no one would even think to do, and you started making thousands of dollars from it. Like you're hitting 6 figures from this. Like, girl, come on, you're on your way to your $1 million year. You're on your way to impacting people the way you want to impact people. Okay. Like you're on your way to making history. You're on your way to being the first rich person in your family. Like you kind of have to empower yourself. You got to bring it back. You got to remind yourself of, you are that chick. I was going to say another word, but I haven't cursed on this podcast and I don't want to, but just remind yourself that you are that person and you can do anything that you desire as long as you're making the time for it, you're taking the actions, and you're working on yourself. So those are the 3 things that I always go to when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and they help me so much. These are not just theory. These are things I practically do. These are things I preach. I go ahead and I have a bounce back list of activities. I go ahead and brain dump and I get strategic about planning in the tasks that are making me feel stressed out, right? And asking for help. I go ahead and work on my mindset with the things that work best for me. If you are feeling overwhelmed, I want to remind you to go through these activities. I want to remind you to breathe. I want to remind you to say those affirmations. You are strong. You are confident. You are resilient. You will overcome this. God is there leading you to where you need to be. You are not behind. You are not behind. Telling yourself that you're behind or that you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve can only happen if you make the choice to. If you're committed to what you're going after, it will always happen for you, and everything happens in its divine timing. So don't allow yourself to feel behind. And yes, sometimes that can feel crazy when you're like, girl, I'm behind on bills. Girl, I'm behind on the goals that I said I was going to hit last week. Yes, in that sense, you may feel behind, but what do you need to do to adapt? What do you need to do to get back on track? What timeline are you going to follow instead? Because when you really think about it, feeling anxious, feeling worried, it doesn't make any sense. Like sometimes I feel worried, I feel anxious, like that's natural. It's going to come up. I feel stressed. And then I think, girl, why are you letting yourself feel stressed? Why are you feeling worried? Like, what is that going to do? It's going to just have you focus on the thing you don't want. Why don't you focus on what you do want? Why don't you stay optimistic? Why don't you figure out the next thing that you can do, the next best thing, right? Don't think about the whole staircase. Just take the next step and see how things go from there. Who can you lean on during these times, right? It just goes back to the list of activities that I told you to do because it really works. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you use these tips to overcome overwhelm throughout your life and that you get back on track with your New Year's goals. If you have fallen off, I want you to just keep going. Do not give in to the 80% of people who give up on their New Year goals. Keep going. It is only February if you're watching this, in real time as I post it. You have so much time ahead of you. You have the rest of the year. You have the rest of your life. Like, let's seize every single moment because no day is promised. So why not make the most of it? If you have a favorite mantra, I'd love to hear what it is. So I always like to hear new mantras. So go ahead and post it on Instagram. If you're brave enough, share it with others and go ahead and tag me at SadeKelly_ because I'd love to see it. So of course, I'm going to leave you with an action item as always. I want you to create your own bounce back list. What are at least 3 activities that you can do when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling self-doubt, when you're feeling down and you're not sure how to get back up? What is going to be on your bounce back list? How are you going to overcome this overwhelm and get organized again? Before I close out this episode, I would love to also invite you to my From Overwhelmed to Organized workshop. It is a 2-day workshop where you'll learn how to go from overwhelmed by time to organize, achieving your goals 6 times faster, and saving 28 or more hours per week. Yes, 28 or more hours per week, y'all, like a whole part-time job. I'm doing a 2-day virtual workshop. It's going to be hands-on. It's going to be live. I'm going to be showing you how to break free from time-wasting habits that are draining your productivity. I'm going to show you how to master self-discipline and consistency so you can follow through on things when you say you're going to follow through on things. And I'm also going to show you how to create a personalized time management system, right? Not just a plan, but a system, a series of steps that work really well for you, that's tailored to you and fits with your life. So that is something you're interested in. All the details, the link is going to be in the description. So go ahead and sign up ASAP. I'm doing limited spots because it's a live virtual workshop where I will be interacting with you. We will be talking. We will be actually doing activities, right? It's not just me preaching to you. So come ready, prepared to take notes and like really go from overwhelmed to organized and completely transform your life in 2025. You're going to be on this workshop, and I am so excited to host it, and I cannot wait to see you there. So make sure you go to that link and sign up. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love if you would like, comment, and subscribe. And please share this with someone, because it might be someone who truly needs this, and they just need you to send it so they can get it, right? So they can get this information and have these gems to level up and live their best lives. I really appreciate you for being here and tuning in every single week, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.